heard to each
Welcome to How is God Calling You? A production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It is a show that seeks to stimulate and assist youth and young adults to discover the path that God has chosen for them. Vocations to the priesthood, religious life, marriage, and single life will all be discussed. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to our show, How is God Calling You? I'm Father Jim Corda. Today we're going to talk to the Sisters of St. Joseph of St. Mark. And joining me in today's show is Sister Edwardine and Sister Shiji. It's such a pleasure to have you both on the show today.
Thank you.
We want to talk, first of all, about vocation, what basically the word means when we talk about vocation in contrast to a career or a job. And then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about your individual and personal vocations to religious life. So why don't we begin by defining vocation. Sister?
Well, a vocation is really a calling. It's a response to a call, actually. God's call is to everyone, and the call is really to live the gospel. But I think each one of us is called in a different way to live that. And so depending on what walk of life you choose, that's how you are going to be living the gospel. Religious life as a vocation, it's a response where you make a commitment to be a part of a religious group, to be a member of a community, to share with each other all the joys and sorrows of life, to commit yourself to poverty, chastity, and obedience within a community.
Sister Shiji, tell us a little bit about your story and your calling, your vocation as a sister of St. Joseph of St. Mark.
I believe that vocation is a call from God. I am so proud to say that my vocation comes from my family, because my parents are very religious and they never fail to say rosary together with entire family. So it was a good inspiration for me to become a religious, and so I select my vocation like that. And when I was the 7th grade, my sister joined the convent in India. So I got enough opportunity to contact with the sisters. So I attracted by sisters by their commitment and their spirituality and their way of talking to us. So I joined to the convent.
Tell us a little bit about religious life in India. You've been in the States for several years now. What is the church like, the Catholic Church like in India? How is that celebrated? And obviously people are very religious there. Tell us how that is.
We are very religious in India. We are giving more importance for our community life. We always together and do work with our community. So people are appreciating us to do work in the church, in the parish, and the healing ministry. They are very well appreciated.
Sister Edwardine, tell us about that whole aspect of community. You know, we know that community life is part of religious life. It's kind of one and the same, really. Share that with us, but also someone who might be interested in understanding what that whole community aspect is all about.
Okay, community life, I'm sure in each religious community may vary depending on the type of ministry that the sisters are involved in. But community life means sharing with each other, taking time to be able to at least appreciate each other. We often will pray together I know in our group in Louisville, our evening meal is together, and then usually we'll have evening prayer. During the day, the sisters may be involved in ministry, and so they may not see each other. But in the evening time, we have that time to be with each other. It is truly both a joy and a challenge, to be in community life, because each one of us has a different personality, and so you put all these people together, you do have to do a lot of give and take.
Sister, what's been some of the joys of religious life for you in your personal life as a sister? What's some of the things that give you the greatest joy?
Our community life is good, and when I came in United States, I contact with sisters. Sister Edwardine is our superior, and she's treating us very nicely, like a motherly love and care. And it was a good support for us to leave India, because our culture is different than our culture here. So our sisters helping us very, very nicely, and so it was very good experience for us, and I am enjoying my life here with our sisters.
The other word that I'd like us to talk about is that whole sense of commitment. That's in any vocation that we choose in life, we need to be committed to that cause, to that goal. In the same way as Christians, we're committed to the gospel. So how are you committed, and what's that whole sense of commitment in religious life and religious community?
I think commitment comes gradually. I think many of us, when we enter, think that we are making this commitment, but we don't realize fully what it is until we have grown a little bit. We have matured a little bit. And so our commitment will grow with us. Our promise, to follow the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, again, that's going to grow as we grow. And the commitment, I think what I've seen in my own life, but also in other members of our community, it's remarkable. God takes care of that. He gives us whatever grace I think we need to make and follow through with that commitment.
And that brings me to another question of the whole sense of the challenges that are out there. There's challenges because there are fewer of us doing lots of work. There's challenges, as you had mentioned, working with others in community. There's a lot of challenges that are there. Sometimes we could look upon those challenges as good, as building us up and making us better and stronger, or we can look upon them as crosses. How do we address those challenges? And what are some of the challenges that are out there that you face as a religious sister?
Well, I'll have to say one thing. I'm a member of a community that is aging, and one of the issues that goes along with aging are some challenges related to communication, mobility, things like that, and that does affect your interaction with each other. So, yeah, those are challenges that come up day to day, rubbing shoulders with each other. We have to take into account that there are some changes. We are not the same person we were at age 20. And so there's a lot of, we need a lot of help to sort of get through. One of the things, humor is a part of our life and has to be. And I think God has a great sense of humor.
For sure, for sure. Sister Shiji, what would be some of the challenges that you faced or that you have faced coming here to the United States?
religious life is a one kind of challenge. We are called by to fulfill God's plan through our life. But when I was working in India as a nurse, and I working the village area, when my superior asked me to go to United States, I was little bit anxious about that, but I know that God called me to obey His commandments, and my superiors asked me, that is, I am seeing that my superiors, when they ask me something, that is God's plan. So I took that as a challenge. So I came to United States.
I think the other thing is, the sense of the distance of leaving your family, and obviously you were very close to your family. How do you celebrate a new family, here in religious life? Because obviously you have to make a new family. So how have you celebrated that?
I am thinking that all sisters, my own sisters, so I am seeing that way, and we have lot of occasion to get together, and we are celebrating feast and birthday for all our sisters, and we have get together, and we have dinner together. So
there's that whole sense of that community life is kind of not necessarily a compensating for that, but that's almost like a new start or a new beginning for you especially. We're coming down to the last few minutes of our first break. Before our first break, the people that are watching us now, they may have some questions about religious life. And one of those questions is, are you always joyful? Are you always happy? Obviously, there's ups and downs in any kind of life. And share your experience, sister, about the joys and the sorrows of religious life.
We certainly have both. I'll have to admit, one of the things that drew me to this community actually was the joy of the sisters that I had met. I had met our community as a high school student. I was volunteering at their nursing facility in Euclid, Ohio. And when I actually gave some thought about religious life when I was in nursing school, I know I talked with my uncle, who was a priest, and he pulled out the book of religious communities and said, well, you should go to this one or this one, because those are nursing communities. And I said, no, I think I'd like this other one. And he says, why? And I says, because of the joy that I see among themselves. Yes, there are sorrows too. There's sorrows when you see changes in your fellow sisters, when they're not the person that you remember from 20, 30 years ago. But at the same time, if anything, we have to see some goodness in each of us. The plan that God has for each of us, we have trust that, hey, He knows what He's doing.
We're going to take a break and we'll be back. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Mark Quinn. As I grew up on the south side of Chicago, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield not only taught me, but formed me in my Catholic faith. The sisters worked for very, very little. Now as they've gotten older, they have no savings to fall back on. And we benefited from their sacrifice. And I think it's time that we recognize that much of what we are today, we are because of what sisters did for us. It's our turn to help them out in their hour of need. They don't ask for a lot. They embrace the simple life. I owe them so much. That's why I make an annual donation to the Retirement Fund for Religious. Do you remember the religious men and women who shaped your life? Say thank you to them by donating to the Retirement Fund for Religious at your local parish. Join me. Share in the care.
Welcome back to our show. I'm talking with Sister Edwardine and Sister Shiji, and they are sisters of St. Joseph of St. Mark. Let's talk specifically about your community and what does it mean to be a sister of St. Joseph of St. Mark?
Well, our community was founded in 1845 by Father Peter Paul Blanc in Alsace, France. Have to remember that area was political football, so between Germany and France, we had a number of owners, in a sense. At that time, this was sort of a backlash after the French Revolution. The idea of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament was something that was sort of not followed through with. And he felt very strongly that they needed a religious community that would focus on that. But also at the same time, there were many needs of the people. And so the combination of adoration and service really evolved and was really a part of our charism and still is. So we translate our adoration of the Blessed Sacrament through our service in healthcare and pastoral care and in education.
Sister Shiji, tell us specifically some of your ministry with the sisters and what exactly do you do?
Our charism is perpetual adoration and caring of the sick and education for the poor. And in India, we are doing all these ministries, and in the early morning we have adoration in front of Blessed Sacrament. From that we are getting grace from God and we are doing our ministry. Here in the United States, I am working the St. Joseph Care Center, and here also we have adoration in the morning and rosary. From that we are getting energy to serve for God, and we are doing good dealing with the people, those who are in the St. Joseph Care Center, and we are helping them. We are seeing God's face in them, and we are doing our best.
One of the charisms of your community obviously is ministering to the sick. Are many of the sisters in your community registered nurses? Is that part of the charism?
A good number of our sisters are nurses. We have several teachers also. In India, we have a number of sisters who are teachers who teach the young mostly. We have, pastoral care as another area, and that is something that we do both here in the States, but also in India and some of the other countries, the Ukraine, focusing on promoting spirituality and assisting people to deepen their spirituality.
When we were talking about the charism, you had mentioned, both of you, about the adoration in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Has that always been part of your charism? And that's obviously, as you had mentioned, Sister, where you get your grace and your energy, but flowing from that, obviously, is that whole sense of service, as you had mentioned before. Someone who might be with us today watching, who might feel a call to adoring the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, but not necessarily following through with service, what would you say to them? What would you share with them?
I think that's something that they need to do some praying about, discerning, thinking through, because maybe they would be called to contemplative life, such as the Carmelites or the Poor Clares, whose main focus is adoration and prayer for the world. Service, yes, they serve through their prayer. And I think that would be something that with some help and with guidance, they'd be able to maybe consider that as maybe an option that they'd want to pursue.
I know that part of the show is that we are trying to encourage those who are with us who may not necessarily have a vocation to consider a vocation to religious life or a vocation in the church. What would be some of the things that you would encourage them to consider in their consideration of religious life? What would be something that you would say to some young woman, for example, sister, who might be interested in the community? What would you share with her to give her some encouragement or some help to make her decision?
Prayer, adoration, of course, we needed that. And in the other hand, we need to serve the people. And our congregation, our charism is to serve the human being and help the poor and sick. And we have to come to the people, and we have to proclaim the good news among the people. That maybe God's want to do from our part, I think.
You know, you mentioned something that's very interesting, and that is you go to them and not necessarily they come to you. You know, how often in life we wait for people to come to us, but that whole sense of going out, it's very rooted in the gospel, you know, going out to the people. How is that celebrated particularly in religious life in your particular community, sister?
Well, I think a beautiful example is what I saw in India. I was there in '93. To see the sisters serving in the villages. See, they're serving in areas where there isn't a lot of help, whether through the government or any other agency. So our sisters in India go and live in the villages in a usually very limited way. They have very little, but they serve right there. They are part of the people. And so it's beautiful to see them living there and sharing health education at a very informal level, but they're among the people there. So that would be one example where going out to them is really important, not them coming to our hospital or our nursing facility. It's going out. I was director of a home health agency in North Carolina for a number of years, and there again, I feel that that's one way we were able to fulfill that call to go out to people. We went out to take care of them.
Without getting political, let's talk briefly about the need for ministering to those who are sick and suffering. You know, we know many communities, many organizations minister to the sick and the suffering. How important is that in this present world, in this day and age, to reach out to the sick, the poor, the suffering? And how do you do that in your religious life?
Well, I think in your example of caring for the residents at St. Joseph's, you're working with people who are usually very ill, who have many challenges, and for them to see a smiling face, somebody who cares about them, who takes the time to listen to them, I think that's one way that they reach out. In this day and age, we can get caught up with all of the regulations, but at the same time, I think there's a very human aspect that you'll see that I think the sisters bring, you know, to their ministry, whether it's to the sick or whether it's to the poor. I think they do see Christ.
And I want to mention something that Sister had mentioned earlier, and that is when you minister to the people, you're actually seeing the face of God in them. You know, that obviously wasn't something that someone taught you. That was something that's been instilled in you. How is that in your life?
For example, if I say, when I work the St. Joseph Care Center, they like our presence, and they like care by sisters, and they always very welcome to us, and I think they are enjoy our presence in their helpless situation. They need all type of care. More than that, they like our presence, and they like to talk with us. They are very good with us.
Sister, we're coming down to the last couple minutes of our time together. What would be some of the questions that you would pose to someone watching in considering religious life, and how they can answer that question, how is God calling you? What would be something that you could share with them? We've got about 2 minutes left.
Well, I think, we need to ask, are they listening? And what does that involve? Listening isn't just being quiet. Listening involves developing a sense of prayer, just beginning a relationship with God if they don't already have that relationship. Just being able to turn to God in the joys and the sorrows of their life. I think that would be really important for them to at least do that. I think they should take a look at religious communities, contact them. Just say, can I just take a look? It doesn't mean necessarily they are going to join that religious community, but encourage them to come and see.
Well, Sister Edwardin, Sister Shiji, it's certainly been a pleasure to have you both on the show, and God bless you both in your ministry.
Thank you.
And thanks for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
How is God Calling You is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.
Johnsons enjoy Friday dinners out, nothing fancy, just time together to reconnect as family. They make sure others eat as well. By giving to Catholic Charities of Youngstown, the Johnsons join other angels who care for those in need, regardless of religion or race. Show your wings with a gift to Catholic Charities, changing lives one family at a time, providing housing, emergency financial assistance, senior services, and more. Give now at ccdoy.org.